Board meeting. If you would all please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, we'll get started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. Tonight we have 6 separate recognitions. Pat McPartland from the PNEA will recognize the MLK SA poster winners and this year's PNEA scholarship winners. Dr. Kevin Beckner will introduce us to the students selected for the Missouri Scholars Academy and the Missouri Scholars 100 recipient. In addition, we'll recognize 2 parent volunteers with the PACCD. Also, we'll learn more about the early college program from Dr. Jennifer Stanfill and hear from a few of the graduates. First, I'd like to welcome Pat McPartland, president of PNEA.
Good evening, President Todd, Vice President Hopper, board members, Dr. Marty, and Mrs. Stover. I'm very pleased to have a chance to kind of kick off our recognition with looking at some work of our students and then also talking about some of our staff members. There we go. All right. Come on in. Just like being in the classroom. There we go. All right. So I apologize. So we'll leave it there. So Missouri NEA, through its Human Rights Commission, committee does this essay poster contest every year, asking students to both demonstrate visually and also in writing some knowledge and understanding of the mission and the ideas of Dr. King. So we're very happy to recognize the Parkway winners this year. First place in the kindergarten through first group, Shakti Kumar from Shenandoah Valley. Haven't been out of the classroom that long. There we go. Also, I apologize. So I actually managed to skip one. Can I go back? Come on. All right, I apologize. Also, a first place winner, Siddhartham Kumar, also from Shenandoah Valley. The picture you can see here, Prisha Chakrabarti, also Shenandoah Valley, was our second place winner in the K1 group. Well, I'm going super fast. I apologize. So I can go back. Come on. When I can make this work appropriately. All right, I'm going to keep this moving. I apologize. Our first place winner in the 2nd and 3rd grade group was Tanvi Jagdale from Ross Elementary. Here you can see our 2nd place winner, Julia Elstra from Highcroft Elementary. And if I do this correctly, we should. Oh, gotcha. All right. All right. So then finally, in the 2nd and 3rd grade group, David Chang from Highcroft was our 3rd place winner. Come on. There we go. In our 4th through 5th grade group, Shri Kumar from Shenandoah Valley was our first place winner. Oh, managed to skip. No, okay. So Shubh Shritha from Shenandoah Valley was another first place winner. Sanjana Jagubati, Henry, was our 2nd place winner in 4-5. Lauren Harris, Shenandoah Valley, was our 3rd place winner in the 4-5 group. And we actually had a tie and a unique entry, which was a combination from Henry. Mia Harness, Kylie Major, Ava Sievers, all from Henry, collaborated on this entry. And then last but not least, in our 9 through 12 group, Charlotte Broad from North High was our first place winner. So congratulations to those students, their families, and the educators who worked with them so hard. So Parkway NEA is our effort to support educators. Have for a number of years have done scholarships to support them in graduate classes, in attending workshops, or also other professional development activities. So very happy to recognize a number of our educators with scholarships. This is a single slide, so you will not have to watch me fumble for much longer. There we go. I take it back, it's actually 3 slides. For Parkway NEA Professional Development Scholarships, Lauren Bommelsick from Mason Ridge, Brian Guilfoyle from Central High, Tracy Major from West Middle, and Melanie Wilmert from North High, all were winners. And these are $1,000 scholarships for them to use as they see fit. I skipped, and I apologize, I'm not gonna try and go back. Bevito Maniaci Professional Development Scholarships went to Joyce Pipes from Northeast Middle, and Andre Smith, also from Northeast Middle. And we do actually have a student scholarship as well. This goes to a Parkway senior who is moving on to higher education and is planning to come back in a career in education, and that will go to Lindsay Hager from North High. And that concludes me fumbling through my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pat. Next, I'd like to welcome our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching, Learning, and Accountability, Dr. Kevin Beckner.
Well, thank you very much, President Todd, Vice President Hopper, Dr. Marty, Mrs. Dover, members of the board. 10 Parkway students were selected as 2021 scholars by the Missouri Scholars Academy, a special selection committee appointed by the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education screens and evaluates on the basis of the following: student scores from selected individual intelligence and aptitude tests, grade point average, student essays, evidence of leadership, creativity, intellectual curiosity, problem solving, ability, and initiative, as well as project benefits to the students participating in the Academy. The Academy reflects Missouri's desire to strive for excellence in education at all levels, and the program is based on the premise that Missouri's gifted youth must be provided with special opportunities for their learning and personal development. Normally, the scholars attend the Missouri Scholars Academy on the campus of the University of Missouri for a 3-week academic program for 330 of Missouri's gifted students. Due to COVID, they'll be offering a virtual academy this summer from June 13th through the 25th. The Parkway students being recognized are from Central High, Gaia Benoj and Rafa Reza. From North High, Olivia Murley and Sarah Rogers. From South High, Bhavya Koya, Anushka Rawat, and Nell Williams. And from West High, Mitchell Harms, Noah Schnell, and Nathan Zhao. Congratulations to our Missouri Scholars Academy recipients. In addition to those amazing young people, we also have a student being recognized as one of Missouri Scholars 100. West High's Clementine Arneson was selected for the 2021 Missouri Scholars 100 list. This is a statewide program that honors 100 of Missouri's top academic students in the graduating class of 2021. The Missouri Scholars 100 is a statewide program that honors these amazingly talented students from across Missouri. Students were nominated for this statewide recognition. Each student nominated had to first meet the criteria of an academic decathlon, which included 10 events designed to assure academic strength of the student. To meet the decathlon requirements, a student must have a minimum 3.75 GPA, a minimum ACT score of 29, or SAT of 1900. They have to be ranked in the top 10% of the class and have taken upper level courses in mathematics, science, English, and foreign language. These students must also have excellent attendance, be exemplary citizens, and be involved in school activities and programs. Congratulations again to Clementine Arneson for being recognized as one of Missouri's top 100 scholars.
Next, please welcome via video Dr. Bobby Fleming, Director of Special Education, to recognize Laura Hoff and Larry Opinski for their efforts and contributions to the Parent Advisory Council for Children with Disabilities.
Good evening, President Todd, Dr. Marty, members of the Board of Education, and community members. I am Dr. Bobby Fleming, Director of Special Education for the Parkway School District. It is my privilege to recognize two very important individuals this evening, Ms. Laura Hoff and Mr. Larry Opinski. Their commitment and advocacy of students with disabilities has led to an increase in inclusive practices and stronger partnerships between families and schools. Laura Hoff has been president of the Parent Advisory Council for Children with Disabilities, or better known as PACCD, for the past 3 years. Due to her leadership and commitment to such an important organization, there has been an increase in membership and participation. Through her collaboration with both the SSD and Parkway executive leadership teams, we have seen strengthened partnerships between families and schools. Laura has promoted the education of the greater community by bringing in guest speakers and outside speakers to PACCD. Additionally, she has extended her advocacy by participating in other committees such as Project Parkway and SSD Parent Advisory Council. Thank you, Laura, for your service and advocacy for students with disabilities. Larry Opinski has been a longtime parent in the Parkway School District. With that, he has been a longtime supporter and member of PACCD. Having served as a past president and active member of the steering committee, Larry advocates for and supports inclusive practices for students with disabilities. Through his participation in PACCD and outside of this organization, Larry has continually collaborated with the executive leadership of both SSD and Parkway. He currently serves as an advocate for families throughout St. Louis County. In this role, he helps guide families as they make critical decisions for their children with disabilities. He has also extended his advocacy through participation on such committees as Project Parkway and SSD PAC. I might also add that Joyce Opinski, his wife, has served and participated on many committees for both SSD and Parkway also. Thank you, Larry, for your service and advocacy for students with disabilities. Laura and Larry, thanks for all you do for the students of Parkway.
Now please welcome Dr. Jennifer Stanfield, Director of Choice Programs and Parkway Virtual Campus, to introduce us to Parkway's very first class of early college partnership students. Something we've been looking forward to for the last 2 years.
Yes, good evening. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here tonight to celebrate these graduates. In the fall of 2019, we welcomed our inaugural class of the Early College Partnership, or ECP students, to the campus at St. Louis Community College Wildwood. These 8 students attended classes at the community college full-time, where they simultaneously were earning high school and college credits, leading to a high school diploma in the end, and for some of these individuals, an associate's degree. It is my pleasure to recognize the following individuals for their successful participation in this program: Jacob Hall, Michael Miller, Ori Burka, Nina DeSova, Tori Johnson, Maya Lathan, Anna Newell, and Madison Winters. I want to also thank 2 of our graduates who are with us tonight. I'd like to invite you up to the podium to talk a bit about your experience in the ECP program. Actually, we only have one, sorry. Oh. I was like, I thought that was you. I can't recognize you with your mask on.
Hi, my name's Tori. I've been an ECP student, obviously, for 2 years, and I now have my associate's degree thanks to the program. Yay! Woo. So I'm here to talk about how I stayed connected to my high school while also attending college classes. For me, that was really being involved. I was on the dance team at my school. I was in choir, orchestra. I did a cappella. I did mock trial, I did track, I did a little bit of everything. And that's how I really stayed connected to my school. I mean, I had those connections in my sophomore and freshman year, and I made sure I maintained them. I went to every school dance and all that stuff, and I really wanted to make sure that I was still a part of the school. At North High, Fridays, we have like morning pep rally, and you know, a lot of people thought that I wouldn't be there, and like I would go there at like 7 o'clock in the morning. My classes didn't start till 9, be at North and drive all the way out to Wildwood, and I'd still have my uniform on, and people be looking at me weird, but you know, I didn't really care because, you know, I'm still in high school. I'm still showing my pride. Even though I'm not walking the halls of my high school, you know, my teammates still have to wear this, so do I. That's how I felt. And so, even with all the weird stares, I'm like, oh, you're a cheerleader? No, I'm a dancer. And so, yeah, that's it. Is that good? That was good?
Good evening. Apologize in advance for looking at these notes. So good evening again, Mr. President and members of the board. My name is Jacob Hall, and even though I, as of last Friday, graduated from the Early College Partnership, or ECP program, I'd still like to share my thoughts on the program with y'all. So take a few moments tonight to express what I love most about the program and give you my overall experience. I'll start by giving thanks to Dr. Stanfill and Dr. Marty for their help and guidance during my time in the program. They've been great. And also I want to give thanks to you, members of the board, for giving students like myself and Tori and the other ECP students the opportunity at such an amazing program. Thank you. Now, the ECP program has been an instrumental part of my academic career. I've truly loved the entire experience. From the freedom the program has granted me to the course selection I've had while at St. Louis Community College, I have especially enjoyed the academics and the courses I've experienced. The academics were excellent and far exceeded my expectations. One example I repeatedly give to my friends and family of how I have enjoyed the classes I've taken at STLCC is the instance of one of the classes I took in the fall semester, my sophomore semester. This class was called History of Rock and Roll, and while it may seem odd to have an entire class over rock and roll, it is probably one of my favorite classes ever, and I did learn a lot about the topic. Additionally, the professors I encountered at STLCC were very helpful, professional, and understanding, which is something I really appreciated and made me more comfortable in transitioning because going into the program, I was unsure of what my classes and teachers would be like since I was only a high school junior at the time, and I was foreign to college classes and professors. Not only were the professors great, but also the courses they taught. During my time at STLCC, I took 60 credit hours, which was exactly 19 classes, and out of these 19, I cannot pick even one class that I did not enjoy or appreciate. Moreover, the course material in these classes was rigorous and challenging. Transitioning into the ECP program, I quickly adjusted to the different way in which college classes are taught compared to high school classes. I learned that in most college classes, professors often place more of an emphasis on final exams, and as a student, you're more independent, which I believe I really benefited from. Looking back, I can confidently say that I'm glad I took these college classes because now I'm more prepared for the rest of my college career. One more thing I sort of hinted at earlier is that I was able to take a wide range of classes. With the help of my academic advisor, who was also extremely attentive and supportive, I made sure my schedule consisted of classes that met my degree requirements, but were also of interest to me. So I ultimately ended up with a nice balance of completing all my general course requirements and also experiencing some other more degree-specific type classes. For example, my intended major is political science, and in one of my semesters in the ECP program, I was able to take a political science class, which I highly enjoyed, along with another gen ed class like chemistry. So to end, the ECP program overall was incredible. I especially enjoyed the academic freedom and the wide selection of classes I took while in the program, and I also loved the professors and the staff in general at St. Louis Community College. With that said, though, I just want to say that as a pioneer of the Parkway Early College Partnership, I sincerely wish this program will continue. I really hope Parkway will keep this program going because I want other students like myself to have the same opportunities I had and be rewarded with the amazing benefits that come with this program. Thank you all for listening. Have a great night. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Well, since you offered, I'll ask a question to both of you. What are your plans from here?
I'm attending Mizzou in the fall. I'll be a college junior. Go Tigers! So yeah, I have planning on a double major, political science and history, pre-law track.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Tori?
I am attending Loyola New Orleans. I will be, my major is biochemistry pre-med.
Awesome. Well, thanks to you both. We really appreciate hearing your experiences in the program. We've been eagerly anticipating the first graduates, and we're very proud of you. So congratulations again.
Mr. Todd, I would just like to mention, and I think Dr. Stanfield's going to get in this in a little bit in a moment, but we actually had a pioneer, the Rockwood School District got a little bit ahead of us. Can either one of you talk a little bit about your relationship with not only the professors, which you talked about, Jacob, but with students from Parkway and Rockwood, and how did you help one another out? And I know you had a special counselor from the Rockwood School District kind of helped you through the program. So either one of you want to respond to that?
I forgot to mention his name, Mr. Minicello. He was also great. He was one of the counselors from Rockwood who helped. So to speak a little bit more about the two schools coming together with Parkway and Rockwood students that are in the ECP program, there's actually a room at St. Louis Community College in Wildwood that was like a dual enrollment type of room for the ECP students where all the Parkway students and all the Rockwood students could sit together and chat and talk and do homework, just chill till their classes started or whatever. That room unfortunately got taken down, but it was cool while it lasted because I got to talk to some of them. Yeah. So yeah, that was one of the ways that we communicated with the other Rockwood students. We definitely did. I got to know some of them. Yeah.
If you want, Tori, go ahead.
I don't know if you knew this, but Pacific was also there. I don't know if that's a Rockwood school, but they say they're separate. At least the students like to say they're separate. I had a lot of friends from Pacific. I even invited them to my graduation party because we made such a deep connection. And I didn't even realize a lot of them were in my classes. So I saw them like, oh, we're in the same room together. And then we ended up studying. And like he said, like Jake said, sorry, in the room, we would play games and all this stuff. And we write on the whiteboards. It was just a regular classroom. But it was actually really fun to get to know kids who live really far away from me because I stay in Maryland Heights, but they might stay all the way in Winsville, and just to talk and hang out with each other, it was like a really good experience.
I guess one more question. How did, you had your junior year was probably a little bit more normal. How were the 2 years with, contrast with COVID? Was a lot of virtual classes this second year?
So I took a lot of virtual classes, completely virtual. There was an option to come back second semester and take in-person classes, but I felt more comfortable staying at home. My live virtual lecture classes, which was basically, I was on a Zoom call with my professor and then the rest of the students, those went by really good. I was taking music theory, and a couple other classes. Music theory was probably my favorite one to take online because it was just us singing into our mics and it sounded a hot mess. And so they just worked like any normal class would. They tried to work with us as much as possible. SCLCC was really good at making that fast transition to online learning because Blackboard already had basically a live virtual lecture type of meeting place set up. But they really did a good job with offering to give out computers to students who didn't have any, as well as, always having tech support, on call as well. And actually, in my music theory class, we were able to have a lot more guest professors in the class to speak as well, so it kind of expanded my experience, I'll say it like that.
Yeah, so if anybody's wondering, Blackboard is like our Google Classroom for St. Louis Community. I just want to put that out there. So the first year, I'll just say this, because the first year on St. Louis Community College campus, taking in-person classes before this whole thing happened, was great. I loved being on campus. Their campus is nice. And so anyways, the second year, when all this stuff happened, COVID, and classes got transitioned online, obviously they weren't ideal, but like Tori said, the the St. Louis Community College just did a great job transitioning into learning online. I didn't have a problem with it. I had one class in my first semester of my sophomore year, which when all this COVID stuff was still going on last fall. One class was online or on campus. I apologize. And that class got transitioned into going to virtual halfway through the semester, but that went okay. We had everybody social distance masks on in the classroom. It was limited capacity on the classroom. The campus wasn't very busy, but that went fine. And yeah, I didn't have a problem with any of the live virtual lecture classes. I enjoyed them. All my professors were still great. The students seemed to still participate. I mean, I loved it.
Well, I just want to say, and I think the board feels this way, like Mr. Todd said, you are pioneers, and I think Dr. Stanfield would agree, and a lot of our administrators agree. This is a program that has a lot of potential to grow. Dr. Pittman, who is the president of the St. Louis Community College, I think is going to continually expand this program, and I see a time when many more than 8 of our high school students are going to be able to earn an associate degree, and what a start, right? Both of you are literally starting your college careers as juniors. Isn't that a magnificent cost-saving experience that you already had as college students? You'll have your bachelor's degree at age 20. Wow, what an experience, right? And your maturity and your seriousness as, again, pioneers, we really appreciate. Thank you so much for coming and sharing that.
And congratulations to all of the students, staff, and parents that we honored tonight. Certificates have been mailed to them for their achievements and service to the district. Thanks for joining us, those of you who joined us virtually and those in person for these special recognitions. Next up, we have several additions, corrections, and/or modifications to the agenda. Those include 6.01, update to agenda item 14.01, proposed academic calendar, 6.02, addendum to agenda item 10.09, approval of personnel items, and 6.03, addition to agenda item 10.49, approval of corporate partnership, Mercy Health East Communities. Next up, we have citizen statements. It's during this time that we provide an opportunity for citizen comment in an effort to maintain an open and respectful dialogue with our community. The public comment session is not the appropriate forum for addressing individually identifiable student and/or personnel matters. Therefore, due to privacy laws protecting students and employees, comments about these matters should not include personally identifiable information about particular students or employees. Members of the public, staff, and students are encouraged to utilize established policies and procedures for offering suggestions or addressing concerns and complaints prior to bringing the issue before the board. Please be mindful that the meetings of the board, including your statements at the podium, are broadcast and that you are responsible for any public comment you make. In lieu of a public statement, you may choose to submit your comments to the board in writing. Also, due to the time constraints and the need to complete the primary responsibilities of our meeting agenda, we cannot respond during the meeting, so you will receive a response from us in writing. We're always available to have an open dialogue outside of our meetings and can be reached by email or phone using the contact information on the Parkway website. Tonight we have approximately, I believe, 15 speakers, so I will call them in the order in which they signed up. You will each have 2 minutes to make your statement. Before you begin your speaking, please identify yourself and your relationship or affiliation with Parkway. And I will call, we'll kind of do the old on deck circle. And I'll tell you that we have 4 seats up here, and I'll try and keep those seats relatively filled so we can continue this fairly expediently. So the first 4 in order are Samantha White, Thomas Canals, Jake Lionfields, and Trish Gunby.
I'm Samantha White. I'm a Parkway resident, and I'm a parent to a 6th grader at NIMS. And I am here to question the validity of the School Resource Officer Program Review and the board's agenda item to approve renewing the SRO agreement with the County Police Department before finalizing the existing review. This action is completely contradictory and further undermines the legitimacy of the review. Our grassroots group publicly commended and celebrated when the review was announced, but now realize that the current SRO review is neither independent nor community-led and is fundamentally flawed. The review should identify opportunities to improve the SRO program. However, Dr. Marty and President Todd both made it clear during the March 2021 board meeting that the SROs and police department liaisons sitting on the review oversight body will be able to influence the recommendations made to the board. How is a review overseen by police officers and affiliated police departments, all of whom stand to financially benefit, an independent one? When our group expressed concern about this conflict of interest, Dr. Marty and President Todd refused to listen. Dr. Marty also explicitly stated during the same board meeting that the district would not consider the possibility of redirecting the $750,000 to better invest in school safety, even if the program review found that SROs did not benefit school safety or the well-being of Black and brown students. In addition, no students of color sit on the review oversight body, despite the fact that students of color are adversely affected by SROs. Even a request to have a representative of our group sit on the body was denied. We reject the legitimacy of the existing review and call on the Board of Education to disband it and start anew by honoring our original request for an independent, community-led review that analyzes the impact of SROs on Black and brown students with a racial equity lens.
Thank you. Next up, Thomas Canals.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Thomas Canals, and I'm a senior at Parkway Central, and I'm an exchange student from Barcelona, Spain. I'm here tonight to express my gratitude for all the Central staff, but especially Dr. McCarthy, Central's principal. This is an experience that I will always remember. And I know that it was made possible because Dr. McCarthy allowed me to attend Central High. Also, I don't want to forget 3 special teachers. Nathan Wilson, math teacher, thank you for giving us a smile every day, even when you wore a mask. Ryan King, thank you for making physics interesting. And Adam Miller for being one of the nicest teachers I have ever met. I am very grateful that I had the opportunity to be an exchange student, but I'm more grateful that I'm a Colt. I will always be in debt to you, Dr. McCarthy. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Lionfield.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education. I'm also a member of the grassroots group that has expressed reservations about the program review process for school resource officers in Parkway. I'm here to do a couple things during my 2 minutes. I'll make this quick. The first is that there was, for those who don't know, there was a survey sent to students about SROs and their experiences with SROs. A member of our grassroots group actually wrote a response, and since I don't have time to read it, I'll pass it out to the board members. She's a market research professional and had several problems with the wording of the survey. For example, she pointed out some sections where there are leading questions, also a lack of ambiguous questions and open-ended questions, which makes it difficult to have a high-quality survey and data. And other things. I'll let you read this, but it further undermines the legitimacy of the program review to not have a high-quality survey sent to students about their experiences with SROs. The second is a student who wished to remain anonymous asked me to read their statement about their experiences with SROs, and I'll read a section since I only have a certain amount of time. I believe that the desire for SROs to be looked at must be listened to. The amount of detriment to Black and brown students must be measured, and those funds spent on posting SROs either confirmed or reallocated. As a student in a Parkway middle school and high school for the last 5 years, I have never had a real positive or negative interaction with an SRO. I'm sure they hold value to some, which is not what I'm arguing. But by and large, I think it's accurate to say that most people have never had more than a courteous encounter. Some may argue that they provide a safety net, but I have never felt more or less safe with an officer at school. And they go on to comment about how if this is true for them as a white student, then it should be, noted, we should take into account the experiences of a student of color. And lastly, I would just, again, you all are set to reapprove the SRO contract with St. Louis County PD tonight. That's $250,000 a year, and you haven't finished your program reviews to understand the impact of
Okay.
SROs. So it's a
Thank you very
little bit
much.
antithetical to the sentiment of the program.
We need to move on. Next four will be Trish Gunby, Rebecca Thomas, Yvette Lothan, and Evan Field.
Good evening. I'm Trish Gunby. I'm state rep in the 99th district, and that incorporates some South area schools and West area schools. I'm also a proud Parkway West grad. My kids are graduates of Parkway South. I'm actually just here back from Jeff City. I'm here to listen and observe and just take that information with me to help inform my role once I head back in January. And I just want to encourage both the administration and the board, parents, to pay attention to what's happening in Jeff City. Much of the legislation that we heard this past session and we will likely hear next session impacts public schools and funding for public schools. And because of COVID, we have opportunities to watch hearings online, to submit testimony online, so you don't have to travel to Jeff City to testify and share your opinions. So I just want to encourage people to pay attention, and I'm hoping in my off-season per se to reach out to stakeholders in the district and see how I can do the best job possible while I'm there. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Next up is Rebecca Thomas.
Good evening, President Todd, Dr. Marty, members of the board. My name is Rebecca Thomas. I live in the Piermont School District. I have a 5th grader, a 3rd grader, and a preschooler who will be in kindergarten. And I'm here to address the board about the boundary update and how this will impact my family as well as many other families in a similar situation. So my oldest will attend West Middle in the fall, and she will enter 6th grade. My middle son will plan to then attend South Middle per this boundary update unless he is granted special assignment as the plan has suggested. The issue with special assignment is that this causes my family to choose between sending my son to middle school with all of his friends, specifically because they will not be grandfathered in or granted special assignment because they don't meet the requirements, or send my kids both to the same middle school. If I would like to keep my family together, then the transportation issue is put upon us because the plan stated they'll only provide 3 years of transportation. So when my son is in his 7th and 8th grade, I have to then drive them, and that's a challenge whenever both parents work. So while the plan has tried to consider various implications, I really don't think that they have considered the stress or the emotional stress this has put on families and children. They say that the parents have the option to choose. As a parent, I really don't have the option to choose. I have to make my child choose between going to school with their friends or keeping them together with their siblings. So I really think that this plan is not something that Parkway should consider, that they need to go back to their drawing board and really think about how this is impacting the students and the families in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could keep the applause maybe to the end of the evening for everyone who speaks, that would be great. Next up is Yvette Lothan.
Good evening. My name is Yvette Lothan. My husband Scott and I live in Parkview Estates with our 3 daughters. Currently, our older 2 girls, Rose and Grace, are finishing 8th grade at West Middle School, and our youngest, Claire, is wrapping up her kindergarten year at Piermont. Over the years, I've worked with teachers and administrators as a volunteer at Piermont and concerning the 504 plan for one of my daughters. We have had very positive experiences academically and socially at Piermont and West Middle Schools with our 2 older kids, and we want that for our youngest child. My husband and I are very concerned over the proposed changes. We would like Piermont to remain in the feeder pattern for West Middle School. In the Zoom meeting with the Parkway administration in April, the primary reason for the proposed changes was the feeling of overcrowding at West Middle School. In my family's experience, the large student numbers have not been an issue, with an average student-to-teacher ratio of 15:1, even for a child who has special considerations. Using Parkway's CAFR for 2020, West Middle School has the largest square footage of all the middle schools and is actually under capacity at 66%. With South Middle School at 72% capacity currently, I would not want my youngest child to be in a more crowded situation there. Furthermore, the projections for the next few years show stable enrollment. We all want the best possible school experience for our children. Are there other solutions to the feeling of overcrowding besides changing school feeder pattern? Since the needs of the classroom have changed over time, a reevaluation of the usable space at each middle school may provide more ideas. New metrics may even be needed. In conclusion, we have not seen data to support redistricting Piermont to South Middle School. Thank you for listening to our concerns.
Thank you. Next up, thanks. Next up, we have Evan Field, followed by Damana Tanova, Thomas Fussner, and Tiffany Miranda.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Evan Field, and I live off Henry Road within the Piermont boundaries. My daughter Gianna is a 4th grader at Ascension Catholic School, and I have a 4-year-old son, Weston, and a 22-month-old daughter, Aurelia. But the plan has always been for our children to attend West Middle and high school. Although I am originally from California, my wife grew up in Chesterfield and is an alumni of the Parkway Central Middle School. Given our unwavering support of really providing the best education for our children, we bought our house based upon the fact that we would be zoned within Parkway West Middle and high school. After months of searching, we were elated to find a home within our budget that still fed into both of those schools. My daughter Gianna is involved in a number of extracurricular activities, and Aaron and I have worked tirelessly to make sure that those extracurricular activities were with kids that she would feed into Parkway West Middle and high school to ensure a seamless transition from Ascension into the Parkway school system. The day we heard of this proposal, our family was devastated. How could we have spent so much time planning meticulously for our children to be set up for success, only to have it all pulled out from underneath us? It breaks my heart, and as a father who would do anything for the success of his children, we would do anything to keep them feeding into West Middle, even if that means moving. But in this instance, you haven't given the families enough time to make these types of changes. Please explain to us what is the need to rush a change of this magnitude. Adequate time for feeder pattern changes is the minimum necessary consideration for the children and families that you serve. These kids have had to overcome so much over the last 15 months. How could we possibly ask them to start over at a middle school that they never planned on attending and then transfer back into a high school that isn't fed from that middle school? We need positive movement towards hope and excitement for these children. Please keep Piermont feeding into West Middle. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next up, Ms. Tanova.
Good evening, dear President Todd, dear board members, Parkway administrators. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of you this evening. My name is Dimana Teneva, and I was born and raised in Bulgaria. I have 2 kids, 9-year-old boy who is in 3rd grade and a 3-year-old girl. I have learned that with a little child, I must look at the school district, not the property. I'm not buying my dream home, I'm buying my dream school district. I figured out that we need to select a home based on the, we need to select a home address based on school ranking, student test performance, and the school attendance. So we purchased our first home back in 2014 in Parkway West School area. Our son was 2 years old, and we were excited to become homeowners and sent him one day in West Middle and West High. My family has a lot of friends in St. Louis that are from Eastern European countries, and they all have kids with different grades and schools in Parkway West. They all were recommending for us to buy a house that belongs to Parkway West. Through the years, I have met a lot of local people. I become friends with them, and my kids become friends with their kids. And most of my American friends are stating that the purchase of their home is the biggest investment in their lives that they must make. They're making that for the bright future of their kids And whatever we do it for the best for our kids. This is why I'm here tonight and talking, because I do not agree that my kids and my community are to be the selected one for the proposal. Kids from Paramount school zones are not just the numbers. My community represents a good immigration population. The socioeconomic status is lower than some of the areas in other Parkway West. This is a very small community with a small family houses. And Paramount has the highest number of students who receive free low-cost lunch in Parkway West. My concern is the proposal will impact our home values, and we even, people try to relocate to different areas of Parkway West, it'll be difficult because house and cost and everything, it'll be too hard for them. Just to finish, I want to say that I agree all Parkway schools are great, but my family chose Parkway West.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Mr. Fussner.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Board of Education. My name is Tom Fusner, and I live in the Fox Glen neighborhood. My son Tommy is a 4th grader at Piermont, and my daughter Nora is a 7th grader at West Middle. I am proud to be a Parkway North alum. I got a good education, but I moved to the West area because it was the best education. Map scores from DESE in my document back this up. This move will be detrimental to our children, as they will be the outsiders at West High School. Piermont children will be the only kids going to high school with children that do not go to middle school with. Psychologists say all this change is not good for our kids' mental health. We are also a year and a half into a pandemic. I'm going to read a portion of a letter written by Tommy on April 28th because he couldn't fall asleep that night. These are his words. My fellow Piermont students, teachers, and staff, as we are here today, we come over the problem of South and West. You have an adult perspective, but what you need is a child perspective. Here is how I see it when you have a school. I expect me and my friends together to high school. If we split up, it is because we grew apart or they moved. I look forward to seeing my friends every day. And if you take that friendship away from a kid, it could mentally scar them. Do you know how many friendships are broken? And that will increase. So I ask you, for the well-being of every kid in the future or in the present, keep Piermont at West. Thank you for your time and listening to our concerns.
Thank you. Next up is Tiffany Miranda, followed by Douglas Stockenberg, Charles Ortman, and Kemba Metropolis.
Hello, my name's Tiffany Miranda, and I'm the mother of a 4th, 2nd, and incoming kindergarten at Piermont. We have been so fortunate with our choice in a neighborhood full of children that my kids are growing up with. Unfortunately, my children do not qualify for special assignment to West Middle under this proposal, but over half of their neighborhood friends do. This proposal will split the attendance of our current neighborhood children almost in half. Comments in prior presentations, such as change is hard, make those who disagree with this proposal feel like their opinions aren't justified. This has driven the Piermont community together in an effort to educate the board on the impact of the proposal, the reason parents are challenging it, and to clearly outline the facts. Many parents and the community have come together to establish a Facebook page, create a website, distribute yard signs, and collect signatures on a petition that I'll leave here for the board today. I encourage the board to read this information, look at the website, and review the comments left in the petition. These are not the reactions of people who think change is hard. This is a collection of responses and contribution from concerned members of the community. Recently, we did a survey after the webinar to capture the reaction of the district changes. One of the questions posed was, which of the following best describes your opinion of the proposal as presented at the last webinar? Of the available options, 80% of the respondents indicated they were still concerned about this proposal. Those concerned were asked to select one or more reasons, and the top reasons include 80% of families did not trust that West High would remain an option beyond the 5-year projections. 77% believed the quality of West Middle and South Middle were not equivalent. 65% believed that the proposal was too rushed. 64% believe that a significant impact on the students caught in the middle of this proposal. and 59% believed there wasn't truly an overcrowding problem at West Middle, or that overcrowding was not the core issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Stauffenberg?
Good evening. My name is Doug Stockenberg, and I'm a Parkway parent, and I would like to address two critical issues for the upcoming school year. Number one, Parkway must stop requiring students to wear masks at all times on campus. Second, Parkway must not require that any student be vaccinated to attend class. There is simply no longer any justification for requiring healthy students to wear a mask on campus. They are not designed for long-term wear by developing adolescents, and they absolutely should not be worn during any type of physical exertion. There are many profound physical consequences to wearing these masks, but I don't have time to get into them. But I cannot avoid the most profound consequence, and that is the fear being instilled in our impressionable young children by the constant reminder of the supposedly deadly pathogen lurking in every breath they take. We're also teaching students to fear each other under the false presumption that everyone is infected unless proven healthy. This is so wrong, and it must stop. However, it is well documented that the survival rate for school-aged children is 99.9-something%, and healthy Parkway students should no longer bear the impossible burden of safeguarding the human race by being forced to wear these masks indefinitely. Please make it stop. Last spring, we were told to wear a mask to protect the vulnerable. Now we're being told vaccines are the holy grail to personal protection. In fact, the federal government is so confident in these vaccines, they're literally threatening us with untold consequences if we don't get vaccinated. Well, those who want to be vaccinated have been vaccinated, and it's time to stop these requirements. Since vaccinations are now the holy grail of personal protection, there is no reason to require healthy students to bear this burden any longer. With respect to vaccinations, this is also something that should be an entirely personal choice made by a student, their parent, and their doctor, and no one else. Although rare, these vaccines can cause immediate serious side effects, including death. And we have no clue what the long-term consequences are. And I also need not remind you that these vaccines have only been authorized for emergency use only. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Charles Ortman, followed by Kemba Metropolis and Debbie Donnelly.
Hello, my name is Charles Ortman. 2 months ago, my partner and I, Quinn, recently bought a home in this area. We don't yet have any children, but we do plan to start a family here. We are going to be part of the newest generation of this community. We recently learned about the redistricting process and did a lot of research into it before we came to any conclusions. We are very concerned. There are two major concerns that show up to us. First of all is the goal of providing resources where they're most needed. That is very understanding. It isn't about just the West students, it's about all the students at the district. The problem is that by replacing where these resources are going, it isn't removing one problem and then doing nothing else. We are reducing the population at one school and increasing it at another. It isn't a binary state. This will increase the burdens at South. It will reduce the number of available teachers. It will increase the crowding in their hallways. It will cause problems, maybe not to the degree at West, but it is going to create barriers in the way of South students. And right now, South performs lower than the quality of West students. So it bothers me that we are taking our resources as a district and we are putting barriers in the way of students that we need to be helping the most of the ones that we have responsibility over and paving the way clearer for the students that are already performing at the highest caliber. My second concern is that parents are the ones that are doing the research and making their choices for what's best for their student. They chose the district, but they also chose to buy their homes where they did their research at. By making this choice and doing redistricting, we are taking away that choice from parents. We are taking away the ability for the children to be able to have the best future that they need according to the parents that know them best. And I don't think that serves the well-being of the students either. I do agree with the district's goals. What is best for the students is most important.
Thank you. Next up, Ms. Metropolis.
Sorry, I have tired eyes today. Been reading a lot of essays. So, Mr. Todd, Dr. Marty, members of the Board of Education, my name is Kemba Metropolis. I'm an English teacher and faculty sponsor for Students for Progressive Change at Parkway Central High School. Since the initial choice by the Parkway Board of Education to develop a review board to reevaluate the roles of student resource officers, or SROs, students have mentioned to me that they are concerned that they do not have a voice on the review board. After taking the district survey a few weeks ago, several of my students asked me why they had to take the survey, who was getting the results, and if they could see the results of the student survey. After some discussion of the student survey, my students have varying opinions about SROs. Someone asked if he was the guy who directs traffic at the end of the day. Some of my black students said that they didn't feel any safer with SROs in the building and shared how his presence made them think about those viral cell phone video streams of kids being forcibly pulled from their desks by the officers that were supposed to be there to protect them. The other students listened, they asked questions, and one of my shyest students said to me, "He's really nice, but what is he supposed to be doing at our school?" And that's the $64,000 question. What are the SROs supposed to be doing at each school? The kids know that any adult in our building, if they ask them for help, we will help them. They also know we're here to keep them safe. We are here to ensure that each child in the building becomes a capable, curious, caring, and confident learner who understands and responds to the challenges of an ever-changing world. It's really clear from my conversations with my kids that our world is undergoing a lot of change right now. We also want the roles of our SROs to change as our world changes. We create a guaranteed experience for each student in Parkway through the curriculum in our core classes and the amazing electives that produce the well-rounded graduates of Parkway. And one thing that we want to make sure that you understand is that the kids need a voice, and whatever Officer White is doing at Parkway North, that needs to be at every school. He's been there for 18 years. He builds relationships, and that's what we need for all of our students, for each of our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Ms. Donnelly, our last speaker of the evening.
Hi, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Debbie Donnelly, a member of We Can Assist Team, a Parkway North graduate, and a current Parkway resident. I'm asking the board to delay signing the contract with St. Louis County Police Department till you have a chance to review the model memorandum of understanding that was provided via email for every member on the board. The proposed three-year contract has a start date of June 2022, which gives everyone time to pause and gain more insight into the use of SROs in our school district. As a large school district that employs multiple municipal police departments, having one memorandum of understanding for all departments ensures administrators, staff, students, and parents that they are afforded the same protection and expectations of all SROs, regardless of what school they are assigned within the district. Pre-pandemic, there was communication between both the Chesterfield and Baldwin police departments and the school district to make this a reality. Now's the time to engage that same conversation with St. Louis County Police Department. As part of the SRO review, and whenever police departments are involved, our board should want to know more about all that a memorandum of understanding with policing entails. The information from this review should be incorporated in the district's memorandum of understanding going forward. We can believe that adopting a stronger memorandum of understanding is a step in transparency, clarification of expected training and duties, and stronger oversight that the Parkway School District can have over all the police departments that Parkway contracts with for their SROs. After you, the board, Dr. Marty, have reviewed the model memorandum of understanding, we'd like to meet with you in person, discuss any questions, and how to move forward on this goal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thanks to everyone for your time tonight, for sharing your input on a variety of matters. We really appreciate it. Right now, we're going to take a quick recess, and we'll resume the meeting shortly. it up.
On this is when it's not too much. So, are you going to any of the games?
Remember my son.
All right, Keith.
I don't.
Could be over.
I need somebody to flick the lights. You can just dim them just slightly and then bring them back up. I'm gonna bang Keith in the head in a minute. He's coming. Thank you. All right, so we got the superintendent back. All right, let's resume our meeting where we left off. That is agenda item 8.0, approval of the agenda for this evening. May I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda for the regular meeting of the Board of Education as scheduled for May 19th, 2021?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next up, the calendar of meetings. The next regular board meeting will take place on Wednesday, June 16th, 2021, beginning at 7 p.m. right here at the Parkway Welcome Center. Next, we'll move on to board liaison reports.
All right. I do appreciate all the Piermont families that came out tonight. I do want to address one issue that, at least from my perspective, is not a valid argument with their approach right now. And it really bothered me. And the mere fact that both my daughters have gone through South Middle. They had a wonderful experience. They thrived there. And I think the insinuation that's being made that some schools are less than other schools in Parkway is completely wrong. My daughter did not get a Parkway South education. She got a Parkway education. And I think that needs to be the standard we take going forward. Because as a board, if there are any kind of disparities among the schools, we are not going to let that happen. We are going to give everybody a great Parkway education. And it really does bother me, this insinuations that somehow South Middle is less. We had a great experience, and I do it again. And I think part of the issue, too, is the fact that being now on the school board, I see all the other schools, too. I would send my kids to any elementary, any middle school, or any high school in Parkway. Parkway is a great district. And I think right now we just need to step back a little bit and really evaluate what's going on in terms of the approaches that people are making towards South Middle. So I had to stand up for South Middle. Thank you.
Well, all of a sudden I had a really busy month with board activities. I started making my notes and they got really, really long. First of all, I had the opportunity to go to the 6th grade day camp at Babbler, and it was absolutely wonderful. I was there with the virtual students from West Middle and with some of my colleagues. And those students, some of whom were meeting their teachers for face-to-face for the first time, had an absolutely incredible time. The activities they were doing, I got to learn along with them how to build a fire using flint. I created a spark with flint for the first time in my 50-year life. And the other activity that I absolutely loved is they actually were studying pond organisms in a pond out there at Babbler. It was just such a great day, and we were lucky enough to have the most gorgeous weather on earth too. So I'm so grateful that I got to do that. I also am a member of the Parkway Food Pantry Advisory Committee, and we had a meeting in this past month. At that point, there's a team of people who are working on strategic planning and developing the mission and goals for the food pantry. And those of us who are on the advisory committee got to give some feedback at this meeting. I am really pleased with the direction this is going to set up some continuity with the Parkway Food Pantry because I believe it's an essential part of our district. And I'm looking forward to seeing the work that's going to continue on this, because kids can't learn if they're hungry, and we need to support our kids in any way we can. Finally, I also participated in, and this is a long title, the St. Louis Area School Board Professional Learning Community meeting. Basically, these are school board members who get together from school districts in the St. Louis area, mostly St. Louis County and St. Louis City, but we also had some members from Jefferson County and St. Charles this time. Altogether, there were school board members from 18 different school districts in the area on a Zoom call. This group has been together for a few years, and like everything else, it kind of got put on pause for COVID. We got together mostly to, it was the night before the last day of the legislative session. So we had legislation on our mind, and we talked about how the school boards and the communities in the St. Louis area can get together to effectively advocate for the kind of legislation that we need to support public schools. One of the school board members brought up the idea of how the St. Louis area doesn't necessarily tell the story of its schools terribly well. And there was a lot of energy among this group to make sure that we can work together as boards and as parents and community members to tell that story, to make sure that our legislators can hear it and to pass the kind of legislation that we need to support public schools. I'm going to keep on updating on this because I think there's going to be a lot of work going on in the next year with this group. It was a really good meeting.
Great report, ma'am. Thank you. I just want to briefly talk about the Equity Task Force. Basically, there have been several sessions over the last few months, and the sessions actually concluded last Thursday with recommendations. Each of the facilitators gave a report on their particular question, their particular recommendation, and it's just amazing what came out of this group. It's so impressive when you get a group of our faculty together, students and parents and administrators. The ideas were flowing everywhere, and I think there's a tremendous report coming forth that will outline basically how we can have equity for all in our school district, and that's really important that we get there. I want to thank Dr. Watson, Dr. Mattson, Charlotte E.J. For organizing and keeping us going. It's difficult to have a large group in the Zoom situation, but it worked very, very well overall. And there were a lot of contributions, a lot of discussion, a lot of thought, a lot of great ideas that are coming forth. So you'll hear more about it as time goes on.
Thanks, Sam. I was just also going to comment on the Equity Task Force and that great work and those recommendations coming forward. I've really enjoyed the process as well. So that started with a program review survey that then brought a few things up, and we formed working groups around those things to try and come up with action plans and workable solutions for moving forward as a district. So I've appreciated that. I actually missed the last meeting and have not had a lot of time in the last month because of, in my work life, I do a lot of work with uninsured and underinsured people in Missouri, and that's been a big topic with what's been happening with Medicaid expansion in our state over the last several months. And I'm disappointed, and I believe that if parents can't access good health care, our kids' education will suffer. And so I've been pretty distracted working on that, and I think it's too bad for our school district as well, because I think it will affect our school community, and I think we should respect the will of people. I also want to just note, based on the public comments tonight about the SRO contracts, I appreciate the way that those are set up to give us flexibility to continue our review and to continue talking about what we want to do to have more consistency, more clarity, and Officer White, you got a nice shout out, and have more Officer Whites and have more performance like we get from Officer White in our schools. So just want to make that note as well as we move forward with that work.
My colleagues are bringing it tonight, so I'm going to keep mine a little lighter. You know, I walked into the meeting tonight, there's a lot of parents outside holding signs. There's a lot of parents and community members here tonight talking about different issues that they care about. And whether anyone here agrees, disagrees, I just appreciate and respect that there's so many people in our community that care enough to come to a meeting, to speak their mind, to write a letter, to send an email, whatever it is. Apathy doesn't do our kids any good. We can all disagree, but to have, that our students have parents and families in a community that cares so much and is so involved, I think speaks volumes, and I think is a good sign that, we're in the right place and we're moving in the right direction.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with anything that my colleagues have said. On board with everything as well. I did also attend with Mrs. Hill the school board's professional learning community on May the 13th meeting to reflect on current legislation sessions in the future. And I think I think within our own district, I think we need to do a better job at getting the information out to our community as to what's actually taking place with legislation on education. I mean, it's no secret, and I think one of the agenda items that is up for approval tonight, I'm very happy to see, it got put on the back burner for COVID right now, is our personalized learning initiative. One, I think, of the criticisms of public education right now is that not a lot has changed in how we educate children over the last 50 years. And we can't keep expecting children to be put into a certain box and say this is how you learn, and expect it to be done that way. And I think there's plenty of research out there that now is showing that everybody learns in different ways. And our personalized learning initiative, while it was researched for several years, we had task force, we had subcommittees, a lot of brainstorming sessions. We now hopefully will be approving tonight professional development to get the teachers and our professionals into learning what it takes to do personalized learning. And I'm very excited about this opportunity for Parkway. I think that we need to continue to keep our focus on educating our students the best ways that we can. I agree that I would be proud for any of my students to be at any school in Parkway. And that's when we bought our house, we just said we want to be in Parkway. We didn't know the difference between north, south, central, and west. It just happened that we landed in West. And so, but I would not be serving on this board if I was not proud of the school district, and that's why I sat on the board. And I will tell you, with respect to the SRO program, when I started here, when I first ran for the school board, probably about 8 years ago now, maybe even more than that, was at a time we were seeing a lot of mass shootings in schools and children were dying. And there were like 13 people that were running for the school board that year, all on the premise of, what are we going to do to keep our students safe at school? How are we going to keep a gunman from coming into our school and shooting our children? Locking them in a closet, getting kids locked in closets to hide, and then that closet opened up by a gunman and 20 kids are shot dead. That's the reason why the SRO program was developed, to keep our kids and our students safe. Now, we've got other issues outside of that, and I understand and appreciate the sensitive nature of some of it. But we have to keep our students and our staff safe. And that's what we want to continue to do. We want to make sure we're doing it the right way, we're doing it appropriate, and we're making sure everybody feels safe. So that's the background, is the reason why, from my standpoint, why we haven't started down that path, because we just have a genuine interest in wanting to make sure people stay safe. So I welcome the review. We'll look at the recommendations and discuss it further after that point. Thank you.
Thank you. I always hate going last because there's really not much left to say. But I will add that, like Pam, I had a great experience at our sixth grade camp, COVID version. Having been, and Pam hasn't been fortunate enough to go down to Trout Lodge yet, but having been down there myself, both as a kid and as a board member, it was remarkable to me to see what we were able to pull together. Our staff just did an outstanding job with the Babbler staff to put together these programs and make it seem like, it felt exactly like I experienced a couple of years ago going down to sixth grade camp. I didn't get to ride a horse though, so maybe we can work on that if we're in this situation next year, which we better not be. I'll also mention that since our last board meeting, we spent a Saturday as a board with a lot of you administrators, and so I want to just thank you all for taking that time away from whatever you'd prefer to be doing on a Saturday morning, and we really took a lot of time to hear about things a little bit more in depth than we get, in just a 10-minute presentation. Some of those were a little overdue, and it was nice to get some more information. It's a great opportunity for long-range planning, and we really just appreciate all your participation with that. So thank you. Also want to give a shout out to our legislators. Trish, it's good to have you here with us tonight. We had a government relations meeting just a couple of weeks ago, and Trish is one of the regulars. She has almost perfect attendance, so she should get something. But it is nice to see so many of our legislators take an interest in what's going on in Parkway and in our community, and we really appreciate that. So, thank you. Dr. Marty, you have anything to add?
Yes, I'd just like to continue that theme of the legislature. And Trish, thanks so much for being here. You are really a great connector, and you've really worked with Annie Dickerson and myself, and we've been getting information. And I just want to let our public know that we work very hard to get information for our legislators. We invite our legislators to come to see our schools, to not only come to meetings, but to really come in. And some take advantage of that, others we're trying to twist our arms to get in. Because I think public education, and in Parkway we do some very good things. We talk about personalized education, the SPARK program, the early college program, which we're talking about tonight. There's so many good things here, and I would really like all of the legislators that come and spend some time with us. Our doors are open to them. So, and Trish takes an opportunity to do that, and we really appreciate it. So thanks so much. Also want to just announce that character.org, which is, so we're part of Character Plus in the area, but character.org is a national organization that designates the national schools of character. And Parkway, in the class of 2021, has 2 schools of 49 in the country, Barrett's Elementary and Craig Elementary. They're not new, they're repeaters, but in their re-app, we're successful. I had the chance this week to talk to Arthur Schwartz, who's the president of character.org, and he just kept complimenting the fact that he loves to see each year a lot of Missouri schools, thanks to Character Plus, but also love to see Parkway continually have schools. We have 18 national schools of character, state and national schools of character, and our district is a national school of character. So again, we'll honor those schools at some point, probably in the fall. On Monday, we had a vaccine clinic at Central Middle, thanks to the great work of Catherine Park, our interim director of health services, works closely with Dr. Matheson and her staff. We had over 1,500 students get their either first or second, I believe, Greg, right? I think it was a combination. We had 200 students for their second, and then several, 1,300 or so students, 12 and up, get their first vaccination. We work with Medley Pharmacy out of Cuba, Missouri, and they do a great job. So we're going to continue trying to get our students vaccinated if they like, parents as well. And we just think it's a great opportunity to open up our schools and take care of that need if parents certainly want to do that, or students want that. And it was great to have so many parents so happy and so thrilled that we provided that on Monday. So thanks to all of you. We had a load of volunteers and nurses and police and security personnel. Robbie, thank you for getting that all organized. We also have MAP testing going right now, and it's another challenge in MAP assessment this year, the state testing, is that the state wants us to also test not just the in-person students, so to get our virtual students in. And I just want to compliment Dr. Beckner, Carter Snow for really using our virtual learning days, the Mondays, for our elementary and middle school testing. And we're trying to get to the challenge that the state has given us, 85%. I think Dr. Beckner and Dr. Carter Snow are working hard to get to achieve that, and we want to thank our parents for cooperating and trusting us to get that taken care of. Also, we had a appreciation night, a virtual appreciation night. We usually have an in-person time when we honor our pillars, our retirees, our Light of Parkway, just a number of people we recognize, the Albert Award winners. We did that virtually, and what a great job our communications department did to honor our staff the best we could in a virtual manner. We're also going to have a virtual district art show that I think we're making public. So please, again, we're going to take a pass on bringing people together at Queenie Park, but we're going to have a virtual art show that Mr. Lackey, our fine arts coordinator, is putting together. Graduations start tomorrow, as a matter of fact. Fern Ridge tomorrow, South High School on Saturday, West on South High on Friday, South on
West on Saturday.
South on Friday, West on Saturday, North on Monday. No, I do this by heart. And Central on Tuesday. We're at the Powerplex in Hazelwood, where Dr. Watson, the principals, have coordinated. It's going to be a place where we'll be doing somewhat of kind of a traditional graduation, but outdoors, and our parents can sit in the parking lot and watch big screens or get out of their car. We've heard great things from other school districts that were there, and we're glad to be able to do that. Just we hope weather cooperates. But we're excited to have graduation a little bit more normal this year than we did last year. And then next month we're going to honor a number of students and athletic teams and other state award winners. And one of those is going to be our West Water Polo team, which won the state water polo championship. The West Water folks, swimming and water polo has been a tradition at the West High School, and they won the state championship on Saturday. So we'll be honoring them as well as many others next month. I think that concludes my list, but board members, thank you for all your comments as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have no board subcommittee reports to share tonight. Have no upcoming subcommittee meetings to list. So next we'll move on to the consent agenda. Have a fairly healthy agenda, which we've all reviewed. So may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented in the May 19th, 2021 board materials.
So moved.
Second?
Is there anything to be pulled to action or closed? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Next up is our policy review. That will be DJF.BP, which is our purchasing policy. So I would like to welcome Patty Bedborough, our CFO, for a brief explanation. And take it away, Patty.
Good evening, President Todd, Vice President Hopper, members of the Board of Education, Dr. Marty, and Mrs. Stover. The policy that you have in front of you is part of the original edits that MSBA suggested for us. When we did the F section, which is construction, we had changed the board approval limit to $50,000. So it is MSBA's recommendation and our agreement that we take our purchasing recommendation plateau for board approval up to that same $50,000. This does not change our internal bidding processes. We'll still leave the same limits of the $3,500, $7,500, and an RFP after the $15,000 for anything non-construction related. So what it does do is then allow me to sign contracts up to the amount of $50,000, so it'll lessen part of the things that you review. And gives us a little quicker turnaround on things for especially student activities, for trips, for proms, etc. Are there any questions at this time?
No, apparently not.
All right, I will add that this did get reviewed with the D policy review, which was a team of board members that included Jeff Todd, Debbie Hopper, and Pam Hill.
I remember we did also ask our audit firm, just to make sure we were comfortable with internal controls around this.
Correct.
And we've had clean audits, and so there were no, I'm just reminding myself and us that it was, thank you, the fact that that came from them.
Mhm.
This seemed to make a lot of sense. It's for you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Patty.
You are welcome.
This policy will be up for approval at a future board meeting. Next up, I am pleased to, is Jennifer? Okay, she's done. Okay. Oh, there she is. I'd like to welcome back to the podium Dr. Jennifer Stanfill, Director of Choice Programs, to
Thank
share
you
a
so
little bit
much.
more.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate you all having me back again to talk just a little bit more in detail for information on the Early College Partnership Program. So when this program began, as we launched it, we started it in partnership with Rockwood School District. And so part of that work was being able to leverage and lean on Todd Minicello, who was their counseling coordinator for the Early College Partnership students. And so our students were able to work with him, and he was able to really help, kind of bring us along in the program. So the program is really about fully immersing students in the college experience. But as you heard from Tori tonight, she really took advantage of a lot of her opportunities at Parkway North as well. So we have had students that may take a summer school or virtual class through Parkway, but for the most part, they are all day, every day at the community college. And starting this year, second semester and moving forward, they have the opportunity of taking those classes either in person or virtually. And so during that time, we work incredibly closely with Ellen Wattrick and another partner, Erica Fenewald, at St. Louis Community College, and they really get to know each and every one of our students. We work very closely to ensure that they are being well, and closely advised that they're getting their high school requirements as well as their college requirements. And then upon completion, the goal is that all of our students earn an Associates of Arts degree. So as we identify students, we brought together a team of high school administrators, our principals to start, who visited the program several years ago before we launched it. And then we really tried to determine a review process for applications. I will tell you, in the first 2 years, we didn't have any more applicants than we had spots because it was rather new. When we launched it the first year, it was April of 2019, so a lot of kids had their classes selected, their schedules in place, and so for some students, that was a really huge shift, and so that's why we started with 8, as we mentioned earlier tonight. As we've gone through the years, we've seen an increase, and so now we have a committee of administrators and counselors who really look at class performance for students in the courses they took until the start of the program, as well as their GPA, discipline history, their attendance percentage. So some of those things that research will tell you are college readiness indicators. 90% attendance, for example, in high school would indicate that they have a readiness for college. We also look at the students' access to post-secondary opportunities. So would this program perhaps allow them the opportunity to get a head start by having their tuition covered for the time during their junior and senior year. Prior to last year, we looked at AccuPlacer results. Not as much of a requirement last year, just due to COVID. Again, there were some things that were changed, but we did definitely look at student math and reading scores, and the community college has done a really great job of looking at multiple measures so that we can really determine that students are ready as they're moving into the program. Students are asked to write an essay, and then our families are asked to really commit to the expectations and responsibilities of the parent side of things. So while we cover the tuition for the students in the program, the families are responsible for providing transportation and then providing textbooks. We do have the opportunity to support and assist students and families if they need assistance with textbooks, but for the most part, most of our families take care of that on their own. So this is just an overview of the numbers since the program started. So, and it's broken down by school. And so first year we had those 8 students, all of them moved on to become seniors. And then this year we have 13 juniors in the program. So we did see an increase moving into this year. I will be honest, I was a little apprehensive about what our enrollment or our application numbers would look like because a lot of our approaches to, informing students about various choice programs, Early College Partnership included, were more off the table because at the time we were still remote and learning from home. But I was in shock and awe, I can tell you, when we had 40 sophomores who applied for what started as 15 spots for the 21-22 school year. And then really, after talking with Dr. Marty and Dr. Beckner, we determined that we could accommodate 20. And because we've had some additional room, we're actually at 21 in our incoming juniors and 13 seniors. So next year we'll be at 44 students at the community college, which we're incredibly excited about. So really, future planning for early college, we want to expand our partnership to include the Merrimack campus. We require that all of our students start at Wildwood so that they're kind of all there, and we can connect with them and just make sure that that transition into college is well supported. But we know that proximity-wise, especially for our North and Central students, Merrimack makes more sense. And so a lot of our students do take a couple of classes here or there at the Merrimack campus now, but we want to formalize that a bit more. And to help us in doing that, we will have a Parkway Choice Programs counselor beginning July 1. Actually, she's beginning a little bit before that in being part of some of our orientation work and meeting with the early college partnership liaisons at St. Louis Community College, but Tiffany McBride, who is a current Central Middle counselor, will be serving as the Choice Programs counselor next year and will really kind of take over that role that Rockwood was helping with us as we had smaller groups of kids. And so she'll be advising students and working closely with the dual enrollment and early college partnership while she's there. So I would be happy to answer any questions you all have, but I just want to echo the students' thanks for your support of this program, because we are just seeing our kids thrive. It is just an amazing opportunity. The community college has had nothing but good things to say about our students and their readiness for college, and so all of that could not be done without your support, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions?
Not a question, but just a congratulations. You know, those students were extraordinarily impressive, and it's just a great program. And you know, we debate different things in the district, but it's always nice when there's something that everyone is universally supportive of. So well done.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You know, one thing, we thank Todd, the counselor, but you may remember 2 years ago, Eric Knos, then the superintendent, came and as we were working together. And so part of the relationship was they would help us start early college, and you may want to just comment. Now we're getting some Rockwood students into the SPARK program, aren't we, Jen?
Yes, so as we, when we said, will you help us get going on the early college program, we said, well, this would be a really great opportunity to offer spots to Rockwood students in the SPARK program. And so this year we had 3 students from Rockwood that participated in SPARK. Next year we are slated to have 22 Rockwood students. And so again, just another, we saw a pretty significant increase in student applications this year for the SPARK program as well. And so I think maybe what our kids learned in being home and having to be resilient and not be at school is that they can still stay connected to their peers and maybe learning, it's okay for learning to look different. I don't know, nobody's told me that. It's just, my own thoughts, but we're just really, really excited and also excited to strengthen our partnership with Rockwood.
That's great. I have one question. Where do we, I know we're talking about next year, where do we see ourselves in 5 years with this program?
I think we want to continue to expand. I think the other thing we want to do, so that more kids that want this opportunity can have this opportunity. The other thing I think we want to do is really closely follow our graduates, see where they're going, see what they're doing, because I think, obtaining that associate's degree, some may select to go straight into the workforce with that. Others may want to go on to other degrees. And so I think that is one role of Tiffany as she comes in as the counselor, I think, to really build relationships and connections with the families and the students so that we see where they're at, what they're doing. And the other thing is, I think leveraging some of the partnerships that the community college is putting in place. So they have a partnership right now with Webster University for their students, their associate students to go into their 4-year programs, and they're looking to continue those as well. So, really trying to be strategic about showing our students very attainable and, well thought out paths to get to, degree completion, be it an associate's or beyond.
Jennifer, how do the students find out about this? Is it through conversation with their counselor, teacher recommendation? How are students being communicated?
Honestly, a lot, I think, has been word of mouth, but we do send out every year in December when our choice programs windows open, we send out information to our families and to our students. And so, they're getting it via email. This year, we had to get pretty creative because we didn't have a live meeting. And so I prepared just kind of a narrated overview of the program where parents, there was actually a button in the video that they could submit questions, and then committed to a 24 to 36 hour turnaround time on answers to those questions. So people were very engaged from that. We got a lot of interest there. And then we had an hour-long Q&A, and ironically, we only had about 11 people. All 11 of those signed up. But I think just that process of being able to get the information like right there at their fingertips, I think that also really helped, because sometimes if you can't make it to a meeting, it hasn't been our normal practice to record and post, right? That's just been, something new. And so I think it's gonna impact how we notify families and students about programs moving forward, for sure.
Are we seeing just diversity in terms of kind of socioeconomic status of students' families that are participating? So making sure that, those students who come from families that are lower socioeconomic status, that free associate's degree is pretty huge.
Yes, we definitely are. And really kind of the gamut. And that's why we also recognize that, while textbooks are not a huge cost in the grand scheme of things, for some families it can be difficult. And so we have a process where we can work with our families and support our families, and then also assist with, St. Louis Community College can assist with transportation through bus passes and those kinds of things. And then, in special circumstances or situations, we can assist that as well. And so, a lot of it is really getting to know those kids and families well, and Todd did a great job of that from Rockwood, especially when the kids were there. It got more difficult when we were remote and, working remotely, but I think moving forward, that's really a goal, is that every single kid and family knows who their person is and how to get a hold of us, and they call often, which is good. I'm glad they feel like they can.
Yeah.
I just want to remind the board, this is why we have Jennifer in this choice role, because we're trying to really promote Mrs. Hopper, to your point. We got work to do to get the word out, and I know you're a champion of the technical schools, the SSD Technical South Campus, which we are trying to promote as well. One of the things that's happening nationally is, what do we do to really give students choice when they get to that junior and senior year? There's some studies that suggest, a lot of students, by the time they're seniors, have got most of their credit. They've already taken the ACT. By October, they're accepted at a university, and that senior becomes a little bit of a wasteland. So what do we do to kind of, and I want to say that that is not universal, but for some students, they're pretty much done. And sometimes that transition into the campus is harder, because they've had to kind of, so to keep those opportunities, to keep the opportunities like early college or the technical school or other kind of dual credit options is really something that I know Jennifer works hard on with Kevin Beckner. And I think that you're going to see, Jeff, to your question, more and more effort, I think, to give high school students those kinds of opportunities to really make sure that they're ready, many of them, maybe not all, but a lot of them are ready for that rigor and that opportunity to start their college career, or start their associate career, or a work career, or a spark career, to have those opportunities.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
Next up, we have a work session with Dr. Bogus. We'll be talking about the 2022-2023 proposed academic calendar.
Good evening, President Todd, Vice President Hopper, members of the board, Dr. Marty, and Mrs. Stover. I'm excited to present tonight the proposed academic calendar for 2022-23. The calendar committee, which consists of PNEA and administrators, began conversations in April to compose the 22-23 calendar. The calendar committee is comprised of teachers and administrators from all levels, as well as representatives from Human Resources, TLA, and the Communications Department. I want to take a moment to just highlight a couple of the items on the 22-23 calendar. Per the PNEA agreement, half-days and early release days will continue to allow for records and teachers' work days. As you can see from this slide, at the end of quarter one, there is a half-day records day added into the calendar, similar to next year's calendar, as well as the end of quarter three, top right, a half-day records day. At the end of each semester, quarter two and quarter four, there is a day-and-a-half records day to allow for grades to be submitted by teachers in a timely fashion. Professional development time has also been provided throughout the calendar for PD work. At this time, the calendar represents a total of 1,088.0889 minutes, or hours, I mean. That is important because 2 years ago, the state changed the way we report our time. Instead of by days, we report by hours. And so we are 44.008 hours over the state minimum of the 1,044. You'll notice in the copy provided that we have 36 hours of snow makeup days still in the calendar. That is a state requirement from the state requiring us to allot time and denote time that is set aside if we do have a snow day. Those snow days are identified with asterisks. But one thing I would note is, similar to this year, our first 3 snow days are true snow days. If we had a 4th snow day, we would do virtual learning in the upcoming school year and in 22-23. Similarly to next year's calendar, we have early release days. As they're denoted here in orange, you'll notice the majority of them fall on a Wednesday. We do have 2 exceptions to that in October and in April that fall on a Thursday, because on the Friday of that week, we have a day that is off school. And so we moved the Wednesday late or early release day to the Thursday, so we didn't have an early release day, a full day, and then a day off. That is similar as well to next year's calendar. Teacher half-days and professional development days also coincide with breaks, as we have with other calendars. One of the things I'm most impressed and pleased with the committee's work is one of the tasks is to provide days in the quarters and days in the semesters that equal one another. And so as you will notice on this chart, 47 days are in first quarter, 42 days are in second quarter, providing 89 days for first semester. Second semester is 88 days, 46 days in third quarter, 42 days in fourth quarter, for a total of 177 days. So I'll pause and see if there's any questions for the 2022-2023 proposed academic calendar.
I have one question. This year, the year that we're in, it was the first year that we've shifted for that state requirement to start no earlier than the 24th of August. And we came back from spring break, and our high school kids had finals that week right after spring break. Has that been taken into consideration, and when are those finals going to be in this calendar?
So finals after winter break will fall, if you'll go back 2 slides, the 10th, 11th, and 12th. And so, oh yeah, you can't see that. So when you look at the bottom left box in January, it is the second week when we do return from spring break. We have 1 week of student learning, and then the next week would have finals.
Okay, so we'd have opportunity for review.
Yes.
Okay.
I think, though, I'm looking at Kevin, we're going to return to semester. We won't
Yeah,
have
yeah.
finals after spring break.
I was thinking of that as it was coming out of my mouth. I'm like, oh, no, we're talking about two different things.
Yeah, so I'll clarify for those so this year we had to move high schools to semesters per quarter. And so we did have, I heard winter break and you said spring break. So this year we did have finals after spring break because that was the end of the quarter, which would have to coincide with finals because they were taking semester classes per quarter.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Patty and Brian. Patty back to the podium with Brian Whittle, our Director of Finance. Talk about the budget.
The budget. Oh, gotta lower this a little. Mike's a little taller than me. Good evening once again. So tonight, we will review our preliminary budget and a look forward to our long-term projections as well. So let's get started. So as we begin all of our work, we begin with our Parkway mission. It guides everything that we do, and every goal that we make aligns with our mission as well. Then we look at our Project Parkway goals. So as you know, our first goal is student-centered, our goal 2 is staff-centered, and our goal 3 is definitely resource allocation. So goal 3 is our commitment to responsibly and efficiently allocating resources, including finances, facilities, personnel, and time. So our budget is developed with goal 3 in mind. We start by building our goals for our individual departments, building out what that budget would be with our zero-based budgeting, and then making sure it fits in with our overall revenue projections and goals for the district as well. Just a brief review of our timeline. So, of course, the budget is an ongoing basis. It is not once and done, set in concrete, the end of the story. But our timeline for looking at that next year budget, we always begin with presenting to the board our budget assumptions in the month of December. We bring them to you for your approval in January. In preparation for that, we do an in-depth dive into revenues and looking at the projections and essentially setting our maximum amount of expenditures in order to meet our fund balance growth goals for the budget. During the time since January to now, our budget directors, our program directors, our SAP members, our building principals have all built out all of their individual budgets and turned them in. Dr. Beckner, Dr. Bogus, Kim Cohen, we've all been very, very busy with staffing because, as you know, staffing is the largest percentage of our budget. So we'll talk more on that in a bit too. And we have, of course, received updated projections as well for all of our revenue sources. A lot has changed this year between December and now. Next slide. So just kind of to summarize some of the changes that have happened. First and foremost, this upcoming year is a reassessment year with our assessed valuation. Our original projections included a 0.5% growth in our existing property. We were being very, very conservative because with the pandemic, we did not know the outcome of our commercial property. We know that we do have a very, very strong residential property market currently, not only in the St. Louis area, but pretty much nationwide. But we also know that the commercial property is at risk. But what we do in the springtime is we essentially do a trial run of our calculation, and then that goes along with all the property owners' assessed valuation changes. So things that we know from those early numbers include our new construction is currently at $6 million.
When we did our projections in December, we were looking closer to a $20 million new construction. In conversations with the assessor's office, he has told us that currently they haven't really paid a great deal of attention to new construction. He believes that some of those numbers will change before we get our actual numbers in the fall in order to set our actual tax rate. In addition, we knew that we have over a 10% growth in our residential market. So with that, that means that we will roll back our residential rate. We are only capped at growth of that 1.4%, which equals the one-year consumer price index, even though the property growth is over a 2-year period. In addition, our initial numbers showed quite extensive growth in our commercial dollars, in our assessed valuation. The assessor also warned that don't bank on that essentially when we look to the fall, most likely our commercial assessed valuation should be relatively flat year over year. When taxpayers file their protest for commercial property, they most likely will be meeting with them one-on-one and doing a settlement on the spot, essentially, because as they're assessing the property, they don't have any way of finding out how much of the property is actually vacant and how much is under lease. We also know that we're in a pretty constant state of flux because of COVID with office buildings in return to work. We know now that we have vaccines readily available and many of the restrictions have been lifted. Multiple employers have announced, if they're not already back in person, that by the fall they'll at least be on a hybrid going back in person. So what has all of this told us? Well, with our initial growth, we looked at a 0.5% growth in existing property for our revenue projections. So currently we can say in confidence that we will most likely see that 1.4% growth because of our strong residential market. In addition, we are keeping our collection rate at an estimated 96.2%, truly because we do believe ongoing protests are a thing and those settlements will be happening. This current year, I could note that we still haven't received any of our settlement payments, even though we know that the State Tax Commission has settled some of the outstanding cases. We know there's a backlog at the county in order to pay back residential members and commercial taxpayers. So then, of course, that is a holdup in then us paying that money back as well. Another bright spot is our Proposition C tax money. So that is the 1% statewide tax that is included in sales tax, and then it's redistributed back to school district based on our weighted average daily attendance. Originally, we forecasted that that would be close to $1,005 per weighted ADA. In our current estimates, this is at $1,045 per weighted ADA. On top of that, our legislature just recently passed the Wayfair bill, which provides sales tax on all internet sales. In previous legislation, that money was not going to go back to the Prop C fund, but in the legislation as passed, it does go back to that fund. So we're hoping for even continued growth in the Prop C. And just to note, Prop C revenues are our second largest source of revenue for the district. Our state funding formula should be fully funded, and this is also the year that we will have an adjustment for the allocation of the lower financial institution payments. Of course, DESE at this time does not have a breakdown by district, so we have not included that allocation in our budget. If you recall, that has been a very fluctuating revenue for us, so it's really difficult for us to say what 40% reduction of which number shall we take. So we're just looking at a flat for that at this point in time from year over year. Also, the president has extended the free breakfast and lunch program for all of our students through June of 2022. So with that, we will have free lunch and breakfast offered for all of our students each day. We also will continue our meal box delivery, not only during the summer, but then also for our virtual students next year. In addition, we've partnered with Chartwell, so we are very excited for the possibility to grow in our participation of our students to increase as well. Further, we have completed our negotiations with both our nurse union and our CWA, which is our custodians and warehouse. We are still in the process of our negotiations with our PUMA group, which is our Parkway United Maintenance and Grounds Association. As far as staffing, Dr. Bogus, Dr. Cohen, Dr. Beckner have been working a great deal on staffing, not only for our in-person students, but also for the needs of our virtual campus. They have done a remarkable job of using our existing staff to make as many FTE allocations as possible. But with anything else, you know, there are a need for adding additional FTE in order to support certain programs for our virtual campus. And in addition, our EL support, our reading specialists, et cetera, for our virtual campus students. With that, we will be utilizing our ESSER federal grant funds for that. We have been extremely cautious to apply any of our federal funding, which is one-time funds, to any long-term recurring expenditures such as salaries. So we know that eventually our enrollment in our virtual campus will hopefully decrease as well. And of course, our directors and principals have completed their own per pupil allocation budgets and their zero-based budgets. So we have put that all together, and Brian Whittle will be going through how that looks in our financial statements as well. So next up is just an overview of our federal programs. So I know at our December meeting, we mentioned all of our CARES Act funding, our FEMA funding, and different sources of federal funds that we had received so far. In addition, we have 2 additional federal sources that were approved by the legislature. So we have ESSER 2 funds, which were approved in December, and now we'll have ESSER 3 funds, which were approved in March. What we do know is ESSER 2 funds, our allocation is $5,351,251. Our allocation for ESSER 3 has not been officially announced yet, but it is believed to be 2.2 times the $5.3 million, so just over $11 million. We have until September of 2023 to expend all of the ESSER 2 funds, and until September 2024 to expend the ESSER 3 funds. Some of the highlights for items that the grant will cover: certainly student learning loss. We want to make that highlighted and a center point of where the funds will be targeted. Certainly to cleaning supplies and anything to prepare for the return of students or support their ongoing stay in our schools. Education technology, such as funding for our Chromebooks, summer school and supplemental after-school tutoring, and then any kind of expenses relating directly to learning loss, especially with identified groups such as our English language learners, our low socioeconomic status, and our children that need reading intervention. In addition, the ESSER funds provide for HVAC improvements as well. So perhaps filtering, air purification, control systems. So our facilities group has been evaluating some options, and we will be bringing forth some recommendations at a later date. We do plan to build a multi-year plan, and because these are one-time use funds, we do want to make sure that we are not supplementing too many salaries in these items, so that we are not setting ourselves up to failure with our operating funds in the future. So we do want to ensure that the positions that are added that are either short-term in nature, or if they are longer term, that we will have the needed operating funds in order to to support them on an ongoing basis. So for the next part of the presentation, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Brian Whittle, our Director of Finance.
Now I got to raise it back up. Good evening. Thanks for having me here. I don't think I've been to a board meeting in person for over a year, so this is fun. Not wearing gym shorts. It's actually, my wife reminded me last year as I was going downstairs to the basement, I had basically, a tie and a shirt tucked into a pair of gym shorts. She took a picture because she thought it was so funny.
Oh, no. We would have let you still present.
Oh, I'll keep that in mind. I'll just throw it up by Dr. Roy.
We were wearing the same thing.
That's what I assumed, yeah.
I'm really impressed you tucked it in.
Yeah, those looked all baggy, other, yeah. So, all right. So just kind of hopping on what Patty was saying, this is kind of a breakdown by percentage of our revenues. This year, it's actually different. I think every year I could have come up here and presented the same slide, and within 0.1%, almost everything was the same. But our federal has jumped, as Patty noted. We got the ESSER funds, we have the CARES funds, and the federal. So it went from normally being 2% of our total revenues to almost 4.5%. And it'll certainly, once we get more of our funding in, be higher than that 4%. But as Patty noted, we don't even know what our ESSER 3 award is yet. So their local's normally 90%, so that's what took the hit as federal went up. But as you can see, as local is 88. So what does that big chunk represent? So it's kind of a breakout. Of that 88% of local, 83% of that bundle of local is just property taxes. That's 74% of our total revenues. And then as Patty noted, our second biggest revenue overall is Prop C at 7.6%. As you can tell, food service at 0.11 and financial institution tax at 0.23. Those are our biggest changes probably in the past few years to local. We have financial institution tax used to make up 2% of our revenues, and food service was also pretty close to 2% at 1.7. We're saying 1% here, 2%. For a district our size, 1% is $2.5 million roughly for operating funds. So we take every percent, every 0.1% very seriously because it does have a huge impact. So. All right, but then just because as we are talking about how property taxes, again, is 74% of the pie, that is where we do spend most of our time looking. As Patty kind of went over these components earlier, there's 5 big things that make up to our final property tax number. It's our collection rate, which we're doing 96.2% this year. The CPI, I always hate to talk about this in front of Patty because she probably knows more about property tax in the state of Missouri than anybody else in the state of Missouri. So I'm be very careful I don't mess it up. So I always think of the CPI as the limiter. As she said, residential went up 10%, but our CPI is 1.4. Well, taxes aren't going to increase 10% then. They're actually going to go down. And I know that's a common misconception, probably the biggest misconception. If you talk to somebody in the public, they're like, I got my assessor notice, it's up 10%, that means my property taxes are going up 10%. That's not true. The only way that could really happen is if there was ever a vote to increase taxes, and we're not doing that, but I don't know what the other, fire district might or someone else. So the other components are recoupment, new construction, and assessed valuation. So, kind of get all that together in a pot, and that's how we set our rate, and we get to our next set of numbers. These are all the components broken onto a chart. As you can see, we've had that steady growth in assessed valuation. Collection rate, it spikes, but it does seem to average around 96%, 96.2 if we were to look at the last few years. We hope it ends up going up, especially as they get through this backlog of protested taxes, which they have. We had a really big spike last year. It was probably, it was our highest collection rate on record. As far back as we could see, that was the best year we ever had. But that includes collecting prior year taxes and then also the county not paying out as much protested. CPI, as Patty noticed, as I said, that's our limiter. We were conservative with that. I think anybody watching the economic news right now, you hear about, is there inflation? Is it temporary? That could impact. The CPI could end up being larger as a result, but we went with conservative because you don't want to budget for a large amount of revenue, and then as Patty was mentioning, 3-4 years down the road, you're like, well, what happened? We have all these expenses and no revenue coming in. And then our other item is new construction. As you can tell, the 22, what we're looking at, the preliminary numbers are low, probably the second lowest in recent memory. As Patty said, the county is looking at that number, and hopefully there are some changes. I personally think there's some buildings that I know of that may not be included, but we don't have a breakout yet, so we can't say that certainly, but we certainly hope that number goes up. So once we've set that property taxes, here's a breakout of our revenues by year, not just a percentage. You see property taxes is big at 183 million this year. And you might look at it and say, why is that lower than last year? Well, last year we came up with this presentation and we were worried and we put recoupment that would normally have gone to capital projects into operating funds of about 3 million. So without that recoupment, the property taxes would pretty much be showing about a $3 million growth from this year to our projected for next year. So it's not really going down, it's just we had that one-time fund next year, and we'll kind of get back into what we did with that in a little bit. But I would say, and then you can also just see the federal jump, historically being around the 4 to 5 million, and we're looking at 11 million next year. So that's quite an increase. The other local, again, it's down because of that because of the VST, because of food service and FIT, the financial institution tax. And then I always point out the earnings on investments, we're only looking at 100,000. Just after 2 years ago, most of the finance department was very excited when we hit $1 million in earnings on investment, but we're lucky to get 0.2% return on our money now, so we probably won't see the $1 million again for a few years in earnings on investments. So now we have our revenue number, close to 250 million this year. So what do we do with that? And then that goes to the next slide where we create our expenditure budget. First, you start with the building needs, your program budget needs, and then salaries and benefits are always the two biggest. And as Patty said, we work very closely with everyone in the district to set those needs. What is most important? What should we do with our salaries? Where should we put FTE at? It's very complicated. We don't want to grow it too much, but sometimes there are needs where the FTE does go up. So. All right, and here's just kind of the percentage breakdown of how we spend our money. Now, this probably could have stayed the same from year to year, and again, it's just 1/10% or so, you'd notice. But, we're close to a little over 85% for salaries and benefits, and then you get your purchase services, which, say we have a speaker come in, that's purchase services. Supplies, think of your PPE, your textbooks, it's in there, and then student activities at 1.4%. And student activities, it's in there in revenues and expenses, and they offset each other. We budget $3.5 million in revenues and expenses, and it's amazing how close it comes to that every year. And if you think about it, we don't really know when North High is going to have a field trip that they're going to collect a lot of money on and then pay it out. It just so happens we only collect enough to pay out on those field trips, so the revenues normally offset the expenditures fairly evenly for student activities. All right, and going back to our biggest expenditure, salaries, what's one of the biggest drivers of salaries, and that's going to be enrollment. We're fairly steady. There's looking at a small decrease next year, but we'll see that on the next slide. We also had other items, as Patty mentioned, when we were looking at staffing. You had your Project Parkway goals. The McKelvey primary opening, there are 3 positions set aside for that opening that, as we said, we try to do our best to split it out, but there's 3 new positions in the budget. We have the mental health task force, personalized learning. I know 6 care coordinators were added to the budget for next year. And then, of course, we'll have the enrollment where it's rather flat to declining, as you see on the last page. We did set aside 3 new positions. I know Mike and Kim worked very carefully to allocate staffing appropriately. So you could have flat staffing, but maybe at one school there's not enough to actually reduce it, but another school had enough of an increase where they do need a new teacher. So we do, even with the flat enrollment, you have to be conservative and plan on there being some growth. And of course, Virtual Academy, as Patty noted, positions for there, you have virtual counselors, the virtual specials, the stipends will be paying some teachers that aren't virtual all the time, so that adds up. I think altogether we got, 1.1 to 1.2 million in new positions. A lot of that's going to be offset by ESSER, and as Patty, we're very clear about how long we're planning those positions and to make sure we don't run into that cliff in a few years when the funding's gone. So. And then, of course, you set your staffing. We got that number. And then what are the raises? So here it is for each group. The teachers, 3.14. Nurses are 5.1 next year, but the following year, they're 2.25. And then 3% for the rest of the district. And then if you were to look at our salary numbers and compare it year to year, you'd notice it only went up about 2%. That's because even though we have salary increases budget of 3%, we know there's going to be turnover. we've already seen a lot of the turnover that's going to happen. So that pushes it, annually, we get closer to a 1.7, 1.8% growth in salaries every year, even though overall it's around 3%. And frankly, we need that turnover on some level. You don't want too big of a turnover, you don't want to lose institutional knowledge, but to keep that growth under 3%, there has to be some. And, you know, we have roughly 2,500 full-time employees, so that you're just always going to have turnover, and we can count on that year after year, and we budget accordingly. And then again, kind of like our revenue, here's just a breakout of our expenditures. You can see next year revenue, we had revenues around 248 and expenditures 246, so we are forecasting a surplus to get that fund balance growth. But I do want to point out in the future years, and Patty will get into this, you see that red line of identified reductions. That's just cuts not cuts we need to make, but it's just spending we need to be careful on in the future. We need to look at this year, you know, we hardly ever spend 100% of our budget, so we know there are areas where we can reduce in the future to make sure we stay under our revenues. And I would say those numbers may look scary, but you could go to every presentation, you know, that precedes even me and Patty, and you would see a number like that there. And what that does is when we're doing our budget planning, it tells us not only do we need to be careful for next year, we need to look forward 3 or 4 years in the future and make sure we're not building up something that's not sustainable. And I would say, looking at our budget, I would say it's sustainable, just as me and Patty would tell you every year. So, then if you go to the next slide, so kind of how does this work out? We're looking at a 0.25% growth every year, almost. You know, in some of the future years, that 4 and 5, we may not hit it, but overall, we're looking most years, and I think once we get to the actual years, we'll probably get a lot closer to that 0.25. We had a huge jump last year, if you look at from 19 to 20, and that's because we had just cut spending so much last year when we stopped everything. That really helped that grow. And then this year, we're looking at another big growth too. And if you remember, I mentioned earlier that we put roughly $3 million as a one-time recoupment into the operating fund. Well, we're finishing the year much better than we thought we would have when we looked at ourselves 12 months ago. And right now, we're budgeting a transfer of $3 million from the operating fund to the capital projects fund. What that capital projects fund, it allows us our long-term needs. Like, we know we have buses every year that need to be purchased, so we need those, you know, we need transfers in there when possible. If we hadn't done that $3 million, in the past few years before this year, we had been putting some property tax into the capital projects, but this year was different. We didn't know what it was, but I think we were, as we said, it was a one-time, and we didn't use it to build the operating balance. We do plan on transferring it to capitals if all of our projections hold steady. So, and this is just, I guess, all funds besides just our operating. That's where we focus on. That's really the heavy lifting of what's, we can change every year. Debt service, it's kind of fixed. We have a very, we have a healthy debt service revenue collection compared to our expenditures. When we issue bonds, we plan it so our annual payments stay kind of steady. There's no shocks. We even, if you were to look at it, there might even be some years where our capital payments compared to interest look low, and that really just sets us aside that year for, if we were to do a bond issue in the future, that we could allocate it to keep the payments even. We haven't painted ourselves in a corner in debt service. I think we could go out, we look in the future 20, 30 years in that fund and it looks healthy. Capital projects, again, we have a strong starting balance of $14 million, and those expenditures of around $3 million, that's kind of what we look at the capital projects fund as almost a floor of what we're going to spend. Some years we'll probably come to you and say we have other items, but the $3 million is the floor, and that includes $1.2 million in buses roughly a year, and we have lease payments on some buses too, and then so that is roughly half of that, and then the other is just capital needs across the district. And a capital need is typically an item that costs more than $1,000 or $5,000. They're the big items. It's not just buying, your PPE masks. It would be building, well, the building we're in is the bond issue fund. But if we were to do a big repair to one of our buildings, it might be capital projects instead of bond issue. So, and we'll have, by the end of next year, we'll have most of the 2018 bond issue spent down. Here's our graph that just kind of shows our fund balance percentage by year compared to revenue and expenses. And if the blue is bigger than the red on this graph, the green line is going to grow, and we want it to grow enough. It has, if we went back to 15, 16, we were saying we have to build this because we're borrowing money every year. that green line's high enough now that we're not borrowing money in November, so we don't have that interest cost anymore, which is great. It was our goal. It's also important to just keep a healthy fund balance so we never get to that position again.
All right, so just to sum up, if we go to our next slide, just some of our challenges that we do have ahead of us is really the complete unknown on property taxes and our commercial property. We know that, our residential market is strong. I know that realtors even last year were saying that real estate market for residential was going to crash soon. Well, it is still extremely strong, and no matter what you price a house at, it seems to sell for $10,000 to $18,000 over the list price. So that's pretty incredible. But the big unknown is the office space and how long it will take, I guess, for offices to come back all in person, or if they will decide that, for long-term basis that they will not need as much office space. So in a recent article in the Business Journal, I just quoted some figures here. Retail space, they say in the St. Louis area, was relatively flat year over year with a vacancy rate of about 5%. Industrial space had a decrease in vacancy, mostly due to stocking up for things for the pandemic. So an increase in storage areas, et cetera. And then office space vacancy rose from 10.9% to 12.1%. So this is heavily weighted, of course, with employers making decisions on whether they will bring their employees back or not. So, certainly something that, we will stay attuned to. And, we have an excellent relationship with the assessor, Sarah, the deputy assessor. I don't know if that's her official title, but certainly she calls us, even with some legislative issues. We call, we can pick up the phone and call her, and of course email her at any time too. So we do try and keep in very good, not only good graces, but in good contact with them as well. So we can, learn the trends and know if there's any pitfalls that we should be waiting for. So at this point, really we want to open it up to any questions you may have.
Well, first, I'd like to thank you and Brian for doing such a great job, as always, explaining and walking through everything with us. We really appreciate it. I think back, several times during your presentation, I thought back of where we were last year and having this same presentation and the really serious concern that you and others had about where we would be at this time. And I'd just like to say thank you for your diligence and your steadfastness in following, every lead you can with the assessor's office and the state in making sure we're getting every dollar that we're entitled to and in putting it where it belongs in the budget. And so it gives us so much reassurance that we're headed in the right direction. And obviously, not having to borrow money at the end of the year last year, that was huge. It's a great accomplishment, and we look forward to that continuing. I do have one question on the slide with, and you don't have to go back to it, but the slide with the real estate, new construction. Mm-hmm. Is that new construction overall, or is that just residential or commercial also? Dr. Marty, the reason I asked is Dr. Marty and I participated in a meeting with all the mayors and city administrators a week or so ago, and I know the mayor from Manchester talked about the moderate growth that they're looking at, but the mayor of Chesterfield talked about some significant developments there. And how will that affect us, this year, next year, 5 years from now?
Yeah, excellent. So the new construction was a combination of both residential and commercial. So it's property that was assessed and noted as new construction as of January 1st. So the two cities that you spoke of, both Manchester and Chesterfield, those are both future developments. So it's not included in the new construction currently. We do have a meeting with city administrator from Chesterfield, Mr. Geisel, on, I believe, Wednesday. So he will give us a little bit more of a breakdown of that new construction, because as he noted, that was going to be close to $2 billion. And I believe it was close to 70% or so in Parkway. So that day, he didn't have the exact breakdown, so we are going to meet with him and find out a few more details. So that is wonderful news, because anything that's new construction that is not under an abatement project does come to us, and that is what's recognized as new revenue. So that'll help us feed in some of those gaps that we had on the bright red numbers when we looked at the expenditures and the possible reductions that we have to do. You know, we really try to look at our revenues and really budget conservatively, so that, you know, even in a worst case scenario, hopefully, you know, we're not going to be in any worse position than that. So we know, like, 1 year out, we can estimate a little bit closer, but that 3 year out is still a little bit riskier. Some of the indications from our current, you know, economy would show that we have actual growth in, you know, the future that we really shouldn't be banking on, even perhaps that collection rate of being the 96.2. But as Brian showed, based on our history, you know, it has been a, you know, very prominent, especially in this area, that our taxpayers are sent propaganda even in order to encourage them to protest their taxes.
Thank you.
Patty, I have a couple of questions. The virtual academy, is this something that we're going to be budgeting for how many years? I mean, is it something that you're anticipating keeping in the budget for, you know, the next 10 years or so, that it will be consistent, that we'll be seeing this?
That is an excellent question. So I will start by saying we actually had virtual classes prior to the pandemic that were offered to our students. So we will have a portion of that, at least, you know, in future years. What Dr. Beckner and a lot of his job-alikes are working on is perhaps a solution that districts can combine together and perhaps have a virtual campus that is a combined effort. So perhaps we get staffing from multiple districts. We have students from multiple districts in order to actually support it ongoing. Do we currently believe it's going to be close to 1,000 students in the following year, like it is projected to be next year? It's kind of too early to tell, but I would imagine our numbers would decrease, and that's why partnering with the other districts will be essential.
I think it will stay a choice program, though, in essence, right? I mean, I don't think we'll see the dollars disappear, to Debbie's question.
Correct, and it makes sense for especially some of our smaller enrollment classes. Let's just say you have, I'm making this up, a calculus part C that only has 4 students, you know, in each of the high schools. Instead of having the FTE support that at each of the high schools, we could have one virtual section that supports all 4 high schools, and then you'd only have, you know, one FTE supporting that hour. So it gives us additional flexibility.
Well, and as I understand it too, the virtual academy is something that we're continuing to develop in anticipation of more students interested in doing virtual education, because it's what suits them, it's what they like, as a choice program that Dr. Barty just suggested. So it sounds like we need to anticipate that we're going to continue to see a virtual academy in Parkway grow and develop and evolve over the course of time, that and expenses come along with that, I would think.
Absolutely.
My other question on the operating revenue side, a couple of things. Can you speak to the matter of tuition from other districts?
Sure.
It's gone way down, and what's the story behind that?
So you may recall that several years ago, both Riverview Gardens and Normandy School District were unaccredited, and students from those districts were allowed to come to other districts. Well, we allowed the students, even after the districts were accredited, they could remain in our schools until their next transition year. So if they were in kindergarten a few years ago, they can stay in the elementary school until they are transitioning from 5th grade to middle school. And the same thing, if they were freshmen at that time, they can stay until they graduate. So that's what it represents, and that's why the numbers are dwindling.
Okay. Does that affect our enrollment numbers then also? Or are
It
they
is
still technically enrolled in?
Yeah, it's a
Parkway,
small
or-
portion of our total enrollment.
Okay.
Our total enrollment would include, of course, virtual and in-person, and then it would include our students that reside in the city, part of the VIC program, any of our homeless students, and then any of our students that are here tuition-based.
Okay.
And it also includes any Parkway employees, children that attend our district as well.
That's right, okay.
So remember, not every student that is counted in our enrollment do we collect state aid on as well. So if we collect tuition from them, we do not collect them for state aid.
Okay. And then I believe the last question is earnings on investments. What's happening there?
Oh, well, interest rates severely dropped. So pre-pandemic, we actually had interest rates of 1.69. Yeah, and some close to 2, and overnight fell to 2 basis points. Or really 12 basis points because we get 10 basis points over, or 2 basis points over the Fed fund rate, which of course was the 10 basis points. So literally fell overnight. So it's not a matter of our cash balances decrease, it's a matter of the multiplier decrease severely. So even on longer term investments, we're receiving currently less than 1%.
We don't, there's no longer-term investments that offer us more than our bank offers us. So there, our bank is just because that was our contract, there's no way to take.
Yeah.
We get that same deal. Most banks would offer like 50% of that fund rate, so it's a low number, but we're getting double what we would.
Right. And, you know, the Simmons contract was up for either renewal this year or we had the opportunity to rebid. But as we looked at the renewal options, we knew that any option of the other banks that turned in were actually less of an interest rate opportunity than the Simmons renewal. So at that point in time, it was a real easy calculation to decide we were renewing with Simmons Bank for 2 years.
Okay.
So, and we will rebid once that is over because of course we have to bid it every 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I just have to ask, did Millie need to fall asleep tonight? Did I help with that?
I have my wife put it on whenever I see the budget assumptions presentation. She's probably been out for about 15, 20 minutes by now.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time, and we will be spending the next 2 or 3 weeks preparing that 140-page document for you to review.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For Millie's packet.
Next up, the next anticipated closed session will be held on Wednesday, June 16th. Details of the closed session will be posted within 24 hours of the anticipated meeting. We have no recess or closed session to go into at this time, so may I have a motion and a second to adjourn the regular meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you all for attending.